What's going on, dear viewers? This is your gracious host, Kaine Walker, and this is the very first book review I've ever done on this channel. I didn't really want the first one to be a DNF, but there you go. The book I chose to read was Soul Cage by L.R. Schulz, finishing only 5 full chapters. Now, before I continue, I want to make this clear. You know, as enthusiasts, we get our fair share of hacks and bad actors meddling in the arts, but the goal of my literature assessments is not to dishearten genuine creators. You know, the ones that try to give a quality experience and not stroke their own egos. However, in giving my critique, I will be tactful, but I will be honest. Starting off, I did not enjoy this book. I'm just gonna come right out with it. And now, I'm gonna tell you why. I will do so without spoiling the book in case any onlookers would like to experience this work for themselves. Firstly, the spatial orientation and scene setting often felt very vague, with the area we're in being mentioned but not adequately described, which made it very difficult to place myself within scenes, especially when traversing an area and moving from one place to another. It was a bit hard to visualize. I could tell how a scene was supposed to land emotionally or tonally, but could never derive the full impact from it because I felt so displaced. I thought the character work to be a bit hit and miss, though I'd only met 3 of them that we follow at this point, having only read 5 chapters. 2 out of the 3 I'd grown to like during the prologue, and those 2 were Midrin Duneslayer and Willhart. The problem with that is, with Will, he has a character quirk that describes him drumming his beat of 5 whenever he's nervous, and the problem is it came across as like very awkward, but not in a believable way. It felt very forced, and the justification for it was his gift for art and seeing patterns, but why that would compel him to drum a beat of 5 when he's nervous, I have no idea. Regardless, neither of those were the things that made me put the book down. It was the prose. And at the time, having spent my hard-earned money on what I wanted to be a spectacular book, judging by its cover art, I had some choice criticisms for what I was reading as chapters progressed. It was as if the author was afraid of audience interpretation down to the most minute details. Things like he said without a hint of sarcasm in his voice, or he rose his arm in a non-aggressive action. Like, why can't you write it in a way that implies whatever tone you're going for instead of just telling me outright, this is what you should be thinking? Like, I really don't appreciate that from any form of writing. And to be fair to the author, he did express that he's new to writing. I just wish he'd honed the craft a bit more before he decided to publish a book, because everything started to make sense once I read that. But yeah, like, the book was telling me what I should be thinking instead of allowing me to draw my own conclusions. And that, more than anything else, was my biggest issue. I don't appreciate anything that doesn't allow me to think for myself. Other problems involved the book feeling a bit self-indulgent at times with its description, to the point where it felt like it was dragging the story down and trying to overplay its hand. I realize this bit of criticism is very subjective, but I can't exactly argue for taste, can I? Everyone has their own. But so when taking those issues into account, all of it worked together to slowly wear away at my immersion, and then eventually my suspension of disbelief until continuing to read it felt like wearing a shot collar. I would try to get back into the book, and then I'd see something that would just annoy me again, and then I'd want to put it down. But that's enough with what didn't work with the book, because I do want to be fair. What I'm going to talk about now is what I think actually did work for the book. First thing I do want to bring up is the character work, and though I did mention it being a bit spotty, I do believe it was workable. I would revise Will's character quirk with the beat of 5 thing, make it something more believable. I think him having a knack for patterns was enough of a character quirk, but maybe you could work another detail in there, maybe. Another thing I would do is make the names sound a bit more authentic to the time period they're borrowing from. I realize it's fantasy, but the names remind me way too much of something I'd see on World of Warcraft or D&D. They don't really feel like medieval names. It really just feels like someone trying to be overly poetic with how people are named in this world. Another thing that I think worked very well, despite how people may feel about it, because, you know, the souls mechanic is a bit common, I think the premise was actually really good. The idea with Soul Cage's magic system is that homicide grants power in the form of, you guessed it, souls. And the more souls an individual has, the more powerful they are. Normally, I would put an asterisk here because of power creep. Many of you know that the stronger someone is, or the more they can do, or the more versatile they are, the more boring they are, unless said power and versatility comes with a compelling drawback. Now, the author has provided that. the main drawback in Soul Cage is that if you have so many souls in your possession, you have episodes where you'll get cacophonous voices trying to take over your body. You'll hear screams ringing in your head, and each individual soul will be fighting for control, meaning your own soul could be lost in the process of gaining power. And this causes the main character to turn to drugs and alcohol to suppress the voices. So yeah, and you could potentially forget who you are altogether. That's exactly what a mechanic with so much world-breaking potential needs to remain interesting. So I really did appreciate that. Now, so with not much else to speak on, having read so little of the book, I believe I've gone on long enough. The next book I plan on reviewing is The Dresden Files, Book 1, Stormfront by Jim Butcher. And I think this is the formula I'm gonna go on. Anytime I find a book that I don't find particularly appealing, just to prevent, you know, so many bad experiences in a row, I think I'm gonna pick from a list of curated, highly recommended books. But I still want to try my hand at finding a hidden gem. I'm still gonna find books that people aren't really talking about that much, see if I can find something to bring to people's attention, you know what I mean? But anyway, don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and click the links in the description to keep your fingers on the pulse of Cosmic Goth. This is your gracious host, Kaine Walker. I'm signing off, and I will see you all again next time. Peace.